Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Nothing Off the Table podcast. We're on episode 4, and I know it's taken 5 years to get to this point, but hey, we're still moving. My name is Chris,
And I'm Cetta.
and today we are talking to a diagnosed psychopath, which is both of our friends, actually, mine and Seta. Her name is Lauren. So, hey, how are you doing tonight?
How you
Hey,
doing,
what's up?
Lauren?
I'm doing good. How you guys doing?
We're all
Great.
right. We're
Thanks for
good.
asking. Yeah.
So before we started recording this, you were talking about the Amber Heard and Johnny Depp trial. So you think that bitch is a psychopath, or you think what? What do you think of her?
No, she
Yeah.
was actually diagnosed with two cluster B disorders, which is the cluster that antisocial personality disorder, in my case, the psychopathic side, is in the same group. There are clusters of personality disorders in the DSM. So cluster B is what they call the dramatic, emotionally unstable, etc. type disorders. Amber Heard was diagnosed with histrionic personality disorder, which is a personality disorder where someone's like very much desperately seeking attention. Behavior is very sexual, very flirty, things like that. So like kind of like attention whore, so to speak. And then she was
Okay.
yeah, and also she was
Oh
diagnosed with
man.
borderline personality disorder, which is uh, a disorder of not being able to having black and white thinking, having emotional deregulation, feeling periods of emptiness, and also like extreme views of others. So like they'll put people on a pedestal and then devalue them, and it kind of swings back and forth between the extremes. They have extreme anxiety about relationships. They have very much abandonment issues is the word I was looking for. So that's borderline
Interesting.
personality. That's borderline personality disorder, and then
Right.
histrionic personality disorder is like the quote unquote attention whore type seeking
Wait, wait,
behavior.
wait,
So
wait. So let me let me get this straight. You're saying that this bitch wait, you're saying that Amber Heard, right? She wanted attention so bad because of her disorder that she just decided, "Hey, I'm about to go on national TV, national media coverage for this trial against Johnny Depp."
well, she didn't have a choice in the case of in regards to the trial. She was
Oh.
being sued, so she didn't have a case. She didn't have a choice, I should say. But HPD and BPD is kind of like it's a bad combination because both disorders on their own are very hard to deal with. I think HPD is a little bit easier to deal with than BPD. BPD ruins people's like lives, relationships. A lot of people lose people in their life because they can't regulate their emotions and they, get very hot and cold and angry at at the slightest insinuation that someone is like backing off, they'll freak the fuck out and they'll just start like freaking out, yelling, tantrums, all that stuff.
Really?
I've dated women with BPD before. So because of their emotional deregulation and my emotional detachment, that was a bad combination. Basically like putting
You
kerosene and a lighter together, it's gonna explode. So
right. You've told me before that women with BPD are like your favorite, or are they, you're their favorite, something like that, right?
women with BPD seem to be very attracted to me, and also it seems a lot of the time that people who have personality disorders, especially usually in the same cluster. So because my disorder is cluster B, women with BPD and HPD are both also in the cluster B group, and they seem to, for some reason, it's almost like kind of like if you think about it like scales, you know, I'm emotionally detached. So women who get very emotionally attached kind of gravitate towards me because they see me as that like, it's kind of like the forbidden fruit or want what you can't have type deal. Like
Oh, I
Hmm.
see.
I'll fuck them and
Right.
then leave, and then they like blow up my phone and they get like, they get really like,
Chris knows all
because
Right,
about
right,
that
right.
life.
Yeah,
Chris knows
yeah.
all about that life.
Do I
yeah,
really? Damn, that's cold.
listen. I mean, listen. When you give a woman really good sex. I mean, I'm talking about like you ream her out, you bang her so hard, you give her so many orgasms, she comes so many times she doesn't even know her own damn name anymore. Okay, her eyes are rolling out back to Pluto. That's the kind of sex that will have a woman trying to hunt you down and slash your tires for ghosting her. And how do I know this? Because I've been stalked before. So
Wait.
that is why I stopped
Wow.
bringing women to my house. Well, I used to live somewhere else. I've moved several times, but that's why I've never brought a woman to this house because I don't want property damage. So,
Wait,
That's
wait, wait,
crazy.
wait. Wait a
and
minute,
also I
wait a
do
minute.
have an affinity for Latina women, and the stereotypes exist for a reason. I'm not going to stereotype all Latinas, but I have run into a few that
Wow.
That's
they'll do
fucking
that.
crazy.
Heard it here,
Lauren, let me
racism.
ask you something, all right?
They'll do that, and
Check
then they'll
this
call
out.
their 10 cousins trying to get you jumped. So,
Lauren,
Wow.
listen, without going into clusters and, all this medical mumble jumbo, like tell us in layman terms, what is a psychopath? Does that mean like you just, want to see everyone die, like you lack empathy? Like what is it? In very layman's terms.
well, I mean, do you want the technical definition or just the layman casual
We want
normie?
yeah, we want the layman,
Yeah,
casual.
Okay,
so that
so
everyone can
the normies,
understand.
the normie terms, well, because normie terms don't really even kind of paint the full picture. Because there's a lot of
Right.
stereotypes, there's a lot of myths and misconceptions. I mean, when someone says the word psychopath, what do people usually think of? Ted
I'm thinking of a
Bundy,
serial
Jeffrey.
killer.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
thinking of it exactly, and that's a
I'm
misnomer.
not I'm not thinking
It's not.
that, but yeah.
It's not technically true.
Right.
Psychopaths have the potential to be serial killers, but not all serial killers are psychopaths. In fact, Jeffrey Dahmer is a very famous example of a serial killer who was never diagnosed with ASPD. He was never diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder,
What?
which is the medical term. Yeah. He had extreme anxiety and substance abuse issues, actually. He was very much when he was evaluated, they said that if he were to have a personality disorder, it would have actually been more like BPD, borderline personality disorder, if it was going to be anything. He wasn't a narcissist. He had a lot of he had a lot of attachment issues. He was very anxious. And people like that are usually on more on the BPD side. So,
Okay.
more in that
So
category. So,
you have no anxiety whatsoever.
yeah, people with my disorder, we have very low rates of negative emotions. So things like sadness, we don't feel depression, fear, anxiety, all those kind of nervousness, things like that, shame, embarrassment, things like that are either very, very shallow and very brief or almost completely non-existent or completely non-existent in my case for the most part. Like I would probably feel a little bit of just like lizard brain reptilian fear if like there was a gun pointed at my face. I'd be like, oh shit, I'm about to die. But I
Hmm.
wouldn't be like, oh my god, and like the world's ending. Like I'd be like, okay, are you gonna kill me or not? Because like I got shit to do. So
So here's
Wow.
another wow,
you
that's
know,
crazy.
That's
That's
crazy.
crazy.
yeah,
Yeah,
So
it
like
here's
is.
another thing that I want to ask you. So not to interrupt you, sorry about that, but I do want to ask this. So you feel no negative emotions, you said you feel no sadness, you've never been depressed, nothing ever gets you down. That's wild to
She
me.
feels a
And you don't
little
personally,
bit of them.
personally for me, I can't speak obviously for everybody diagnosed. But for me personally, I don't feel sad. I've never been depressed. Um, any of that stuff.
do you ever
I've
feel happy?
well, that's also kind of also part of the disorder is also the emotions that are positive are also usually more muted or almost non-existent, very shallow. Kind of think of like a puddle. It's shallow, it's there, but it's shallow, and like it could get easily like soaked up by the sun or like just something happening. So they're very shallow, very brief, and sometimes don't last very long. So most people have like different depths of emotion, and sometimes people, especially who have like mood disorders like bipolar disorder or like major depressive disorder or generalized anxiety disorder. These disorders have like deep oceans of emotion, right? I have puddles or nothing at all. So for me, and that includes like things like happiness, joy. They sound weird just coming out of my
So
mouth, like just things that I don't.
wow.
I mean,
So
I do have the capability, the capacity to feel things. Like I can feel excited, I can feel energized, things like that. So positive emotions do, for me, happen more often than negative ones. But the main negative
yeah,
ones
but
that I feel are irritation, frustration, anger. Anger is a big one. But things like
okay, so
that.
you say you can feel excited and that you say that's a positive emotion, but people
Yeah.
who are crazy, not to say that you're crazy, but people who are crazy could feel excited if they go on a killing spree. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
So,
excitability is different from excited. Like
oh,
I would be excited to get a new car. But someone who's like
Okay.
manic and like driving out off the freeway, they're having their excitability is like that's a manic thing. Like that's very different. Like people on drugs have excitability because they're high as shit, right? Like people on meth, they're like, oh, crackheads dancing outside of 7-Eleven. They're having excitability symptoms. It doesn't mean they're excited in the feeling of it. It's very different. It's a symptom, not a feeling. So those are two separate things.
Right. All right. Let me ask you this, right? So pretty much, are we saying that in your case, being a psychopath means that you just don't give a fuck about anything?
No, I wouldn't categorize it as that. I basically I'll put it to you like this. So think of like the ocean on like a calm day, and it's just like chilling, right? Just there. The waves are kind of like, if any at all, and like occasionally like a little gust of wind and like a flare up of wave will happen, and then it'll just go away. But it's mostly, for the most part, just flat. And that's that's how I am emotionally on for the vast majority of the time. Sometimes, I'll get angry or irritated. Like I said, those will flash up, but it's more of like a flashbang effect. It'll be there and it'll be intense and then it'll be gone. So it's very intense, but it's also very brief. Sometimes it's just like not intense, but it's also still brief. So and as for your question earlier, Chris, no, I don't feel empathy or remorse or guilt. I'm incapable of those. I can fake them. I can fake sympathy. I can fake feeling bad. I can cry and pretend I'm depressed. I've lied many times about being depressed. I've lied about wanting to end my life. I've lied about a lot of things. And I lie just as easily as I tell the truth, which is a skill that I pride myself on, really. Even though it's
Right.
not
Okay.
really immoral, it's considered morally bad by society. But because I don't care about what society deems as moral, I have my own moral system. So I follow that. I don't follow society's norms, which is also part of the reason why the disorder is called antisocial personality disorder. It's not that I don't want to socialize with
Oh.
other people, it's that I'm going against the social norms.
Right. Some
Mm,
people think it
okay.
just means antisocial means that you're antisocial. You don't want to leave your house. You don't want to talk to
Yeah, that
people. That's not what
exactly.
it means.
That's not what it
Right.
is. There is actually a personality disorder that does deal with that. It's called avoidant personality disorder. So that's someone who actually
Mm.
has like extreme anxiety about like socializing. So they're the people that though that kind of that disorder would categorize the people who are like extremely scared to talk to others, people who are agoraphobic, who don't want to be outside their house. So that's an avoidant
That's
disorder.
cluster C as opposed to you, which is cluster B,
Yes,
correct?
exactly.
That's
So different
OCD,
cluster.
anxiety, all these other things. I think schizotypical, right? That would be cluster
Yeah,
C.
cluster
Okay.
C are the schizophrenic and like odd slash eccentric quote unquote disorders. So that would be
Right.
like
Okay.
schizoid personality disorder, schizotypal personality disorder, something like that. My voice is kind of
Right.
cracking because I'm still sick, but yeah, that's cluster
So let me
C.
ask you a question. So this is what I've noticed. I've known another psychopath, another diagnosed psychopath besides you. And this
Mhm.
guy thought he was better than everybody. And from what I'm hearing, like I would ask you if not feeling any emotions makes you upset or not feeling like muted joy and everything makes you upset, but it can't, right? You don't feel upset at all. But so my question actually is, do you think you're better than everyone because you're capable of lying? You have no guilt. You're able to do whatever you need to do to get ahead. Do you think that makes you better?
Well, considering myself better, quote unquote, above other people, that's more of a narcissistic thing. Although people who have ASPD do have narcissistic traits. It's kind of inherent in the disorder, but not to all the way where it would be considered narcissistic personality disorder, which is the fourth cluster B disorder.
Well, isn't it
Cluster,
usually
yeah.
comorbid? Isn't it usually
There are
comorbid though?
comorbid symptoms, but unless you've been diagnosed with both, they're not inherently comorbid. No.
Okay, so you weren't diagnosed with narcissism. You were
No,
just diagnosed with
I've
psychopathy.
I've never been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. Only antisocial personality disorder,
Oh,
like
but
solely
Lauren, I've known
myself.
you for a long time. You think you're I mean, I'm not saying you're not intelligent, but you think you're very intelligent. You think very highly of yourself. You've said these things to me in private, maybe in public too, but with our group
Yeah,
of
but that doesn't
friends.
inherently make me a narcissist.
But you think
Because
you're
people,
smarter than other people? Okay, no. You don't think you're smarter than other people.
yeah, there's the difference is that I acknowledging something that's reality, which is me being a very intelligent person and definitely smarter than like the typical average person. Like the average IQ is anywhere from 99 to like 105. And my IQ is way higher than that. So by mathematical definition, I am smarter than the vast majority of the average populace. But that's not why I would consider myself quote unquote better than anybody else. I consider myself better than other people because I am better than other people. And that's not to say the
Wow.
entire population. I'm saying if I compare myself to someone else, I can tell you whether I'm better than them. It depends on also what we're talking about. Like I'm never going to say I'm better than a mechanic because I don't know how to fix a car. So I can acknowledge where my flaws and shortcomings, strengths and
Right.
shortcomings are,
That's
but
a
I'm
skill. You don't
yeah,
think you have the skill to do it, but
right. I acknowledge that
mentally
I don't because I'm not a mechanic.
right. Okay, but mentally, you do consider yourself better than other people. Like, I'll give you the example that we were talking about before we were recording, that mutual friend of ours who's super depressed. We know this guy. He's very, very depressed and he's pushing people away. And I said,
Okay,
I think he's pushing people away for a reason. And you asked if he's going to trigger warning for people, if he's going to kill himself. And I said, I don't know, but I think so. And you called him a little bitch and you said, I think that's the word you used, and that it was Darwinian or
Oh my
something.
god.
I said
What
it would
how
be
did you
natural
put it?
selection.
Natural selection, that's what you said.
Yeah, I said it would be
Yeah.
natural selection as it usually is.
As it usually is, that's what you
Like
said.
the
Damn.
That
concept of
is
natural selection,
crazy.
not the concept of natural selection. I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm just saying the strongest survive. The technically adaptation is how you survive, but you know what I mean.
I
Right.
understand. I know about evolution, but like that was the question. I understand the concept of what you're saying. And if he kills himself, he's weak. That's what you're saying. So you're inherently in your
Oh.
mind better than this guy
Well,
because okay, go ahead.
well, let
Yeah.
me correct the record here real quick. I was saying that he's a weak little bitch and he would like if he does do that, that it would be a weak move for him specifically. But I
Oh
just want to be
man.
clear. I'm not generalizing all people that are either suicidal or have killed themselves as weak. That is not what I'm doing. Because there are plenty of people who have had things like terminal illness who have had like medically
Different.
assisted suicide,
Yeah,
and
that's
I
different.
completely understand that, and I would never call that person weak for wanting to
That's
end pain that they were going through. And even someone who's like depressed and ends up killing themselves, like let's say, for example, Robin Williams, a very famous example of someone who was very much loved but was depressed and ended up ending his life
oh,
over it. And
Robin
I would
Williams
never
had dementia, some kind of like bodily dementia. I don't know what they call it. He had something wrong with
well,
him physically.
he hung himself. So he was obviously miserable in some way, shape, or form, and he ended his life. But I would never call Robin Williams weak. He was a very good actor. He was probably a very good man. Someone also like Chester Bennington, I would never call him weak. He was a good musician. Made a lot of music that I jammed to when I was in high school. You know, like I would not call someone like that weak. You know, they put in hard
Mm.
work. They lived a lot. They lived a good life. But obviously, depression is still an illness, and an illness can still destroy you. So I just want
Lauren.
that to be clear that I'm
Okay.
not
Well,
stigmatizing people who have either suicidal ideation or have attempted or have actually committed suicide. I would never
right.
Okay.
blanket shame all people.
Okay. So,
I
Lauren,
Okay.
who would you
That's a good
consider
response.
weak?
Well, there's a lot of people that I consider weak. I consider people who beat their wives to be weak. I consider rapists to be weak. I consider people who do a shit ton of drugs and ruin their lives weak. I do not believe that addiction is a disease. I know, hot take. But I believe that people who steal are I mean, depending on who they're stealing from, that actually I can make an argument for that. So I'm not going to call them weak. They're immoral, but that's fine. Um, so I'm not saying it's fine for them to steal. I'm saying it's fine for them to be immoral because there's a lot of immoral people that exist. Look at the entirety of the government, and you'll see a lot of immoral people. So I
Oh,
mean,
for
and
sure.
they steal all the time. So like, you know, I'm not going to shame quote unquote thieves, but anyway. So yeah, basically people who do shit like that, people who do bad stuff, things that I should say I consider bad. Things like that are weak. Like abusers, rapists, people who do a lot of drugs, especially to cope with stuff instead of, you know, getting the help they need or dealing with it. Those are things that I would consider weakness.
Oh, I
Having
think
to
I
hoard
agree
over
with
power.
you. Hmm.
I don't know
Sorry,
if I
didn't mean
agree
to
with all
interrupt
that,
Oh
you.
man.
no, it's okay. I didn't mean
I
to cut
agree
you
with
off.
some of it. I agree with
Yeah,
some of it.
I agree with
Here's the
some.
thing about
Yeah.
it.
yeah.
with the addiction part, that's an acquired like disease. I think you're right. It's probably not a
Yeah.
disease at first, but
It's
eventually
no,
it
it's always
becomes
a
one
choice. You
because
have
it
to start.
hijacks your body.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, the babies have been born,
I don't
like,
know. I
addicted
don't
to
know if that's
meth.
true.
Well, yeah, well, it's a choice to start doing drugs in the first place.
Well,
Nobody
because
puts
like
a
the
gun to
Native
your head.
Americans, they actually found like there's genes, right? So the Native Americans actually have this gene that makes them predisposed to alcoholism. It's not like they can help it.
Yeah, but they
If they
still
start
have to
drinking
pick up a drink in
alcohol,
the first place and drink it.
well, if it's a social, it's also a social thing. Like, let's say they're born into an alcoholic family, everyone around them is an alcoholic. What's the likelihood that they're going to be an alcoholic? It's probably going to be really high.
Yeah, of course, it's gonna be really high, but no one's putting a gun
Yeah.
to their head and forcing them to do it. I've known people
Yeah,
that grew
I
up in
agree.
alcoholic families, and they were
Mm,
staunchly against it because they saw how it ruined their family. Like, their father's on
that's
dialysis,
true.
and they're like, "I'm never gonna drink in my entire life." And they turned 21, they were like, "Nope." Someone offered them alcohol, and they're like, "Are you fucking crazy?" Like, they were staunchly against it. And I've known
Yeah.
people who were born into families that the whole family was doing meth and crack and stuff like that, and they were completely like straight, what you would call straight edge back in the day. They were like, "Nope, I'm not doing any of this shit. I'm not even smoking cigarettes." And they got the hell out of their house as soon as they were like legally able to. Like at 16, 17, they like pursued legal emancipation. They're like, "I'm not staying here. I'm not going to become a meth head like all you guys." And they left, and they have a good life, and they succeeded, and they're not dead like half their family is. So there are people, you can be born into a situation, and you can look at the disaster that it, especially with substance abuse, and you can go, "Yeah, this is the no thanks for me, dog," and like just get the hell out. And that
Okay.
would be choosing to
I
not fall
agree
into
with
the
her.
same patterns that
I
other
Yeah.
think
people.
I think those are outliers.
I
I
agree
think
with
that when you're
Lauren, though.
born, yeah, I
But you still have to
agree,
make the
but
choice in
I
the
think
first
that it's
place.
an outlier situation. Those people who are doing it, they're the exception, not the norm. If you're born into an alcoholic family, a meth addict family, a
More
crazy
people, more
family like
people,
that,
more people choose not to do that stuff than you would think. They just don't become a statistic, so they don't get counted. That's the thing. People, we have all these statistics of people who do fall into the patterns, and they end up doing the same types of drugs, and that's how we keep track of how the genetic component and all that. But what you don't hear are the many, many, many people who look at this shit and say, "No thanks, I don't want to be like that," and they leave because they don't get recorded. Because no one's going around interviewing or doing any studies. They only become a statistic when they overdose or when they commit a crime while on drugs. That's the thing. We don't get the other side of it. I'm pretty sure that if someone did a study where they interviewed, did a huge poll, and all kinds of people who were from all kinds of families of all kinds of backgrounds, like no like prerequisite besides the fact that your family had to have at least like one or two people that were like close that had substance abuse issues. I'm pretty sure a lot of people would, the numbers would go way up for people who said, "Yeah, I saw that," and went, "I don't want that life," and left.
Yeah, I agree
I
with
mean,
you
why do you
there
think
too.
people flee out of like rural areas and go to cities? Because a lot of rural areas have things like meth, crack, like running rampant, and people will move and go to LA, New York, Miami, places like that, like to get away from Okeechobee, to get away from Louisiana, like, to get away from Missouri, to get away from Iowa, all the places where there's not much to do and everybody's doing drugs because there's nothing else to do. And people just end up staying there, and people who especially are born in those kind of places, they're like, "I don't want to be in this rural little shithole my entire life. I want to leave and see the world, or at least see another place." And they have aspirations, and that's how people, get out of those kind of situations. They go, "I don't want to end up in a trailer smoking meth and having like Breaking Bad type wannabe parents and
right?
have like 10 babies out of wedlock." They're like, "I want to get the fuck out of here and make a life for myself." And that's why populations in cities are higher, because people are running away from stuff back home that's pretty bad, and I don't blame them for it.
I think it's
So,
higher because you get more work. There's more work in the cities. There's more life in
well,
the
yeah, but
cities.
also everything
There's a lot
costs
of
more.
drugs. There's a lot of drugs in the cities, let me tell
Well, yeah,
you.
of
That's true
course. I'm not
too.
saying the
Yeah,
cities are
absolutely.
perfect. I'm not saying the cities don't have their issues. What I'm saying is people who move from very rural areas to big cities, it's usually because they're trying to leave something behind. Whether they're running from something or they just want to get the fuck out of there. Like, there's a lot of people who have had very sheltered lives. They're like, "I gotta leave. I gotta go somewhere. I want to make something of my life. I don't want to. I don't want to be born here and live here and die here and not see a single other place." I mean, a lot of people just leave just to be able to see other places, which,
Right.
is obviously fair. So, I don't blame them. Even if there's no drug addiction, if they just had like generations and generations of people who, like, let's say, are from New Orleans. They're like, okay, I want to get out of New Orleans and like do something, see a beach or something before I die, kind of thing,
No,
or
I
go see
understand.
like the East or the West or
There's
whatever.
beaches in New Orleans.
But
Yeah,
you know
there's
what I mean?
beaches in
Like,
New
see
Orleans.
the East
Yeah,
or the
I do
West
know what you
Coast,
mean.
like go up north, see some snow before I die, because it definitely doesn't snow in Louisiana. So, you know what I
No.
mean? Like, there are tons of reasons for why people will leave rural areas, but a lot of the time they're usually leaving something behind or just wanting to get away from something.
So
And a
let me
lot of
ask
the
you a
time that's
question.
drugs.
Maybe you're right. Have you ever done drugs?
Yes, I have.
What kind of drugs?
Yeah, let's get into
Um,
this juicy bit.
don't get too excited. It hasn't been a ton. Um,
Oh,
I've basically done the main, what they would call the trio of party drugs. I've smoked weed, drank alcohol, and done cocaine. So
Okay.
I
Okay.
was I was drugged with ketamine once, but I don't consider that wasn't consensual. So I didn't
How
really
are
go through
you
that. I
what?
was
How did
drugged.
somebody drug you with
yeah. How did that
ketamine without
happen?
your
Well, ketamine is colorless, tasteless, and odorless. So they put it in a drink and gave it to me, and I didn't know it was spiked.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And yep,
Okay.
it was very sus and very. That was a pretty freaky situation. I woke up, I was like, "What the fuck just happened?"
Did you
Very
wake up
weird.
naked?
Actually, I was very surprised because I was like, when I passed out and when I woke up, I was like, okay, I definitely got raped. Like, I definitely got
Oh,
assaulted.
wow.
Sorry,
I'm
trigger warning for
sorry.
all people. No, no, no. I'm saying that was my immediate thought. I was like, oh, this dude definitely raped me while I was out. Because why would someone spike your drink if they weren't trying to do something to you, right?
As
Like,
a psychopath, do you feel trauma? Like, do you feel like that was traumatic for you, or you don't think about it? You don't care?
well, I didn't finish saying what I was saying.
Oh,
I That
sorry.
was my no, no, you're good. That was my assumption when I woke up. Like I was still in my clothes, but like they were kind of like twisted a little bit. So I was like, okay, maybe he did something and then put my clothes back on. I don't know. So I went to the bathroom and I pretty much stripped naked and I did an examination of my body because I was like, okay. Like I have to evaluate if I got raped or not, or something happened to me. And I looked myself over and I didn't feel pain anywhere. And I was like, okay, that's even more weird. Like, why would you spike someone's drink for them to pass out and then not assault them? And like, it wasn't like my wallet was stolen. Like, I still had my car keys. I still had my wallet, like my phone.
Were
Like,
you
it was really
still in the guy's
strange.
house when
Yeah,
you were examining
I woke up on
yourself?
the couch in his house.
Oh,
Yeah,
and did you
and this
freak out
happened a
on him?
long time ago. No, I mean, like when I woke up, I was like, "What the hell?" Like it was kind of like confusion and stuff like that. But like when I went to the bathroom and I like looked at myself and I was like, "I don't even feel pain. My head is a little woozy, but like other than that." And I was like, "He didn't steal from me. He didn't assault me. What the fuck was this?" Like I was more confused than anything. And I don't know if he had nefarious intentions, but because he had roommates and they had some people over, like he felt like he couldn't do anything. I don't know. I don't know what his intentions were. I never asked. I just ended up leaving. I was like, I got to get the fuck out of here
Right.
because I don't want
That's
to. I don't want to
crazy.
ask the guy who just drugged me what his intentions were. I just got to leave. Like I got to
That's
get the
smart.
fuck away from here. Yeah, I
That's
was like,
smart.
because next time he could drug me and then butcher me up. Like I'm not making the same mistake twice. Like I got the hell out of there. And I texted him later. I was like, "What the hell was that?" And
He told you it was ketamine? He straight up said he put ketamine in
I
your
was like,
drink.
what did you do to to the water that you gave me?" And he was like, "Oh, I gave you a little bit." And I'm like, Gave me a little bit. What the fuck does that mean?" He's like, "Oh, we were smoking and blah." And I'm like, "What did you put in the fucking drink?" And he told me. He said, "Oh, it's not a big deal. It's ketamine." I'm like, "Dude, that's what they put horses down with. What do you mean it's not a big deal?" Like I was
Well, it's a
mad.
party drug. It is a party
Well,
drug, you
yeah,
know.
but you know what I mean. Like it's a tranquilizer. Like it puts animals
Well,
to sleep. Like
they
yeah, they
actually
use
use
it.
it now in therapy. So just so you know, they
Well,
actually do
yeah, I'm
use
saying,
it in
but it is
therapy.
to put someone out, or at least like in a very sedative state. I mean,
No, what he did was that's horrible. He fucking spiked your drink.
yeah,
For
and he put
what?
enough of
Then
it to make
acted
me
like it was
pass
not a
out.
big deal.
Yeah, and he was acting like it wasn't a big deal. Like he just, blew a little marijuana smoke in my face. Like that could be construed as like, oh, a misunderstanding or a mistake. But spiking my drink without me knowing, and then like, no, that's intentional. And he didn't even do
Yeah,
anything with it. Like it's like, dude, you wasted your drugs. Like what the fuck? Like it makes no sense. It's like make it make sense. And it's like
Maybe he
I got
panicked.
zero answers.
Maybe he
he
got
might have panicked.
scared. Maybe he got
Yeah.
scared. Maybe he was thinking about doing it, but then
Yeah,
just
maybe he
decided,
was going
nah.
to, and then he just got cold feet or something. And I like passed out on his couch. Like I was started walking sideways, like I was drunk. Like I felt the effects starting to take hold. And his roommate, who was like playing this acoustic guitar, cool dude, by the way, he was like, "Oh, whoa, you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know. Like I just had water, and all of a sudden I feel weird." He's like, "Maybe you're tired," and he didn't know either. And so he didn't know. Like I assumed that he didn't know because in the entire time that I was there, he was always in the living room. So he wasn't like with the roommate. They didn't really talk. So I don't think they were like conspiring or anything. So the roommate was really nice. He like, helped me to the couch, gave me a blanket. It was a Rastafarian blanket because of course it was. He was a light skinned black dude who was smoking a shit ton of weed, by the way, in the house. And like
Mm.
and like he was just and I the whole night I was hearing the guitar. Like he was playing the guitar and singing with these like two women that he was chilling with. Like it was like a little like powwow circle thing. But like they were there the entire night, and then in the morning it was like just him on the couch, on the other couch, on his phone. Like the guy had like two, they had like two of those like love seat type couches, like only two seats. So he was like on one couch and I was on the other, and I was sleeping, and he put the blanket over me, and when I woke up, he was still there. He was just on his phone. I was like, and I asked what time it was, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to the bathroom, and I was like, do you know what happened last night? He's like, yeah. And he's like, you got woozy, and I was like, did anybody like did I leave the couch at any point? He goes, no, you were sleeping the whole night. It was like, and I was like, you're 100% sure? And he said, yeah, I was here the whole night. He's like, the homegirls left at about like 5 a.m. or something. And I was just here, passed out for a couple hours, and now I'm awake. It was like 8 in the morning when I woke up. So,
Okay. That
yeah.
that
So the
would
roommate was
scare a
there the
normal
whole time.
person. I think
Hmm?
that would scare a normal person to wake up
Yeah,
and,
I wasn't
think
scared. I was
something.
just confused. And then I
No,
got
yeah, you don't
mad
feel
once I found
fear.
out what happened.
Yeah, you don't feel fear. You don't feel
Yeah,
fear at
no, I
all.
don't.
No, okay.
Um,
Right.
Yeah, I
So
don't feel
that's
fear, and I
crazy.
also don't feel fear repercussions either. Like I've gotten pulled over because one thing that people with ASPD psychopaths, myself, uh, have is very poor impulse control. So like reckless driving is like my number one crime. So speaking of illegal stuff, the crime that I commit the most would probably be considered quote unquote reckless driving, speeding slash reckless driving. Think of the person who like cuts in and out of lanes, doesn't want to like I don't like tailgate people, but like if someone cuts me off, then I'm like the person that'll engage in like a road rage back and forth. That's me. So but and I also am usually going above the speed limit unless I see cops.
Wait,
Or
so
I
do
or
you feel rage when you're doing it?
like in a road
Rage
rage
like
incident,
where
I'm
you
mad
yeah,
usually. Yeah, I'm annoyed.
yeah.
I would
But you
say irritated, not really raged.
have you ever
It's
felt
not full
rage?
blown rage. Yeah, of course.
And what happens then? You get
Anger is
violent?
like the most consistent and frequent emotion that I've ever felt in my entire life. So
Okay.
Damn.
well, it's the most like a reoccurring emotion that I have.
And
Like
that's
Right.
typical?
out of the few emotions that I feel, anger is like one of the most frequent ones, as well as like irritation, frustration. Like that group of emotions, I is the emotion that I feel the most. Like
And that's
Wow.
typical for ASPD.
yeah, we usually have very low threshold for frustration. We're very impatient, or we have a low threshold for things that test our patience, and very easy to irritate, very easy to anger, things like that. You know, the short the term short fuse or quick fuse. Those
Yes.
apply
Okay.
not
Wow.
You've
just to
gotten
people
So
with
violent.
anger.
so
Yeah.
Lauren, let
Huh?
me ask you this. You feel a lot of negative emotions, right? So like do you ever think
Not
about have
really.
you ever thought about killing anyone?
Well, when you say negative emotions, that also includes things like sadness, anxiety. Those are also negative
Okay.
emotions.
Okay, well by
So,
negative, I'm talking about like the anger, the
well,
rage,
that's only
irritation, annoyed.
one emotion out of all of them.
That's the
Right.
one you
Um,
feel the most.
yeah, like,
Right.
not the most frequently. Anger is one of the emotions that I feel the most frequently, but the most frequent emotion, although I don't know, I guess you would consider it would be categorized as an emotion, is boredom. Actually,
Boredom.
frequent
Okay.
boredom is also a symptom. It is legitimately a symptom.
Huh.
Yeah. So
You
And
start
boredom
thinking
is
so
about like killing people when you're bored? Like,
not
he
when I'm bored.
wants to
oh,
know if you ever wanted to kill people, and
Chris,
if you
if
ever
you want to
acted
know if
on
I've
it.
had homicidal ideation, you could just ask directly.
girl, listen.
And the answer is yes, by the way.
Okay, so you've thought about killing people. Have you
Yes. Not
ever
because I was bored though.
Have you ever thought about it in great detail, like actually how you would go through with it
Yeah, of
and
course.
fantasize about it?
Of course. She said, of
Yep.
course.
Well,
Damn,
no,
of
I'm
course.
saying, of course, in my case, not all psychopaths or people with
Right.
ASPD in general like fantasize or think about that stuff. A lot of the vast majority of the people who have ASPD, and by the way, I've looked up the statistics. The general consensus is that it's about 1 to 2% of the population that
A lot.
either qualifies for the population. I mean, that either qualifies for the diagnosis or is actually diagnosed. But a lot of people usually don't come up unless they're like charged with a crime and it gets found out, and that's why a lot of us live under the radar, because a lot of us don't end up committing crimes. And especially people who are more on the sociopathic side, they're more emotional and less likely to be violent in general, so they're kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, but they're still considered, you
But
know.
you're a violent person, correct? You've committed violence. And I know you for a very long time.
Okay,
And
okay, wait,
you did
hold
try to
on,
kill someone. You did.
hold on,
Wait,
wait, back up. First
wait a
of all,
minute.
back up. Yeah, no. You just made a lot of claims. I want to dispel some myths here, okay?
He's calling you
First of
a
all,
attempted murderer, man.
yeah,
What are you gonna do
yeah,
about
no,
that?
that's this is all kinds of slander right now. Okay, listen,
Yeah, it really is. You're throwing dirt on
that
her
was a
name right
slanderous
now.
statement.
All
My
right.
That could be
co-host is throwing
considered.
dirt on her name, ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen.
she is throwing dirt on my name. Because okay, so let me correct the record for you real quick. So
Did you or did you not try to kill
to the
someone? Lauren.
excuse me, you're not the cops. Let me clear some shit up real quick. So the first thing you said, am I a violent person in general? The answer is no. I'm not out here beating people up randomly. I'm not even out here beating people up that annoy me. It's not like I hunt people down who have made me angry on the road and just like pull them out of their car and start beating their face in. That would be a violent person. I'm not a violent person. So let me just correct the record. No, I'm not a violent person. Do I have the capability of being violent? Of course I do. Anybody does, really. All humans have the capacity to become violent. But whether they do or not is a different story. And number two, have I been violent? Yes. So the first part, no. Second part, yes. I am not a violent person, but I have been violent before, multiple times.
Man,
And
all
to
right.
answer
Well,
your question, and to answer your other question, Jetta, um, because it is past the legal statute of limitations in the state of Florida, I will answer your question and say yes, I have tried to kill someone before. But because it's
oh,
been over 10 years, nobody can prosecute me. So
tell us about this
I already
chapter of
looked
your
into
life,
it.
Lauren.
I already looked into that. Huh?
Tell us about this chapter of your life when you attempted to take someone's life.
So you want to hear about the pool incident then, I assume.
Oh, yeah, let's hear
Yes.
about this pool incident.
Yeah,
The
because
pool incident.
that was the first time, and that's the time that I'm referring to. So
First and only time, or
I said first. I didn't say only. But
oh, okay. All
for
right.
legal reasons, it's the one that I will talk about because it's been over 10 years. And I
Gotcha.
was never arrested for it. Fun fact about me that you may or may not know. I think Cetta knows this, but you Chris don't really know me, so I've never been arrested a day in my life. I know Cetta knows that, but I've never been arrested. I've never been charged with a crime. If I gave you my legal first and last legal name, you could look up my name on the clerk of courts system down here, and the only things that would come up were a speeding ticket I got once that I won, because I used one of those ticket clinic things and the cop didn't show up, and the stuff with my ex-husband, the divorce, the criminal trial. So I've never been
The
arrested or charged with a
criminal
crime.
trial. The
Yeah,
criminal trial.
yeah,
What?
Wait an absolute
he was
minute here.
charged with assault and with a bunch of drug charges
What
that I
is
told you
going
about
on in
that.
Florida? What is
Yeah,
going
With
what's
my
on in
going on in
Florida,
ex-husband.
that
man?
shithole
He's not
state? What's up?
he's not no, he's not from Florida, so don't put that on Florida.
Yeah, but it was in Florida. He was in Florida, right? Come on.
Yes,
Yo,
because I've lived here my whole life. Where else would it be?
man, Florida is wild, y'all. They got people eating faces. They got like
That
this
was one
this crap
incident. Calm
happening.
down.
Pool incidents, bruh.
That okay. Anyway, so do you want to hear about it?
Yes,
He's
tell us
mad
about
right
the
now.
pool
Yes.
incident.
We want to hear
Yeah,
about the pool incident.
absolutely.
Okay, so I had a friend from childhood, and she wasn't even my best friend from childhood. She was just one of the couple friends that I had from childhood. But she considered me your best friend. I was like, you're mildly entertaining, and your mom lets me, eat at your house and whatever. And she helped pass the time when I was bored. So like, I kind of just went with it. basically, I was just kind of using her, and she considered me her friend, and I was like, you don't know what a friend actually is, but okay. So anyway, but she was entertainment. For me, she served a purpose, and in my case, I'm not going to speak for all people, obviously, with ASPD, but for me, in my case, my entire world literally revolves around me. Like, the world does revolve around me in my
Let
eyes.
me ask you a question. So, if the world revolves around you, but you say that this girl doesn't know what a friend is, do you know what a friend is? Just to divert for a second, what is a
Yeah, of
friend
course
to
I do.
you? What's a friend? Somebody who just circles around you and makes the world about you? Makes their
No,
world about you? Is that a friend? Okay, what's a
no,
friend?
no.
Just so I know before
A
we get
friend,
uh,
like a friend in the genuine sense of friend, is someone that you either hang out with or talk to on a pseudo or semi or regular basis. You have mutual trust, you have mutual like things in common, like you can talk to each other, you can trust each other, you know things about each other, you have things in common, you can, you either can hang out or talk or whatever, like basically just friendship stuff. Like they have your back, you have theirs, like that's all the usual stuff friends
okay,
are.
all right.
But she was
But
not a
your
friend in the
world
legitimate sense to me.
okay.
She
That's
saw
fair. That's
me,
yeah.
yeah,
What you just
perspective wise, she saw me as her best friend, and I saw her as literally just entertainment. She was a tool for me to use, and that's what I did. I used her.
you use
But she didn't know
everybody though,
that.
correct? Do you
She
you
didn't.
use everybody?
No, that's not true. I don't use
No.
everybody that's in my life. No,
Okay.
absolutely not.
Okay.
Because there
So
Okay.
there
you're
Well,
are there are actually quite a few people who are in my life that I can't really extract anything tangible or intangible like benefit from, so I don't use them. And those are pretty much the people that know about the disorder,
no.
except for one person. She knows, but she doesn't. She knows about the disorder, but she doesn't know that I'm using her. So that's a different story.
is that a
Um,
family member?
yes,
Okay. Okay, I
yeah.
thought
Yeah.
so.
So
So anyway,
yeah.
so tell us about this pool incident. This poor
Yeah.
girl.
Let's get back to this, and then we can talk about your lack of friendships and using people. But let's get
Tried
back
to end
to
this girl's life. Yeah.
right.
Okay, so well, I mean, I'm not gonna say I have zero friends as an adult, but anyway, so I was 14 years old. I was 14 and she was like 13, I think, because we were like kind of like a year and a half uh age difference. She was a year and a half like younger than me. So she was like yeah, she was like 13, I was 14, and like whatever odd months. I was about to turn 15, so that was the difference. Like it was October of 2002, I believe. So it was a month before my birthday. And just to put some context into this, this girl, she was very self-absorbed. She's actually someone you would probably consider like as a like a nar. She would be considered a selfish child at the time. She was all about her. We had to do everything she wanted to do. So despite me being a psychopath, I kind of just went along with it because I found her mildly amusing. So even though she thought I was, being dragged along with her and we were doing everything she wanted to do, she didn't know that it was actually kind of the opposite. Like I was using her, but she thought she was getting her way all the time. So the perspective is very warped in both on both sides. It was very warped on both sides, I should say. But anyway, so she was very boy crazy. I didn't care about boys. I was like, I don't give a shit. I don't like anybody equally, so like whatever. So she was like blah blah blah. We were in her pool, her mom's pool in the shallow end because she had like one of those kind of like circular pools. So it had a deep end and then it had a shallow end and it had a jacuzzi like in the corner. So we were in the shallow end, and of course, there's stairs and then there's like a ladder in the deep end. So we were in the shallow end. She was leaning on the outside, like had her arms resting like on the concrete of the patio of her mom's pool, and she was talking about, I don't know, her other friend liking a boy that she also likes, and she's like blah blah blah. And you know how in like what's it called? Charlie Brown, when his parents talk, it's like won't 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 won't.
Right.
Okay, so she was talking, and it was basically like that to me. Like it was in one ear and out the other, and I was paying zero attention to anything she was saying. She had her back turned to me completely, and I was directly like, I was about, I would say, like 5 feet away from her, like not very far, but also not extremely close. And so she had her back completely turned to me. Her hair was in a ponytail because she had long, like dirty blonde hair. So it was like blonde, brown, highlights, all that stuff. It's kind of like, yeah. So she had it in a ponytail. And of course, the ponytail was wet because we were swimming in the pool and stuff. So she had just one straight ponytail down her back. And she was talking, blah, 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 like, womp, womp, womp. And I'm just staring at her. And mind you, I'm not feeling anything. I'm like, I mean, like the only thing it really was like boredom. Was like, like I was feeling nothing, but you could make the argument that I was just staring at her like bored because she was talking about shit that I didn't care about. So I'm just looking at her. I'm staring at the back of her head where her ponytail is, and I'm just like, and it's just womp 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 womp. And I was like I said, feeling nothing. There was no anger. There was no annoyance. There was no resentment. There was nothing.
Did you didn't
No
hate her?
emotion. Yeah, I
You
didn't.
didn't
Yeah,
hate
I didn't
her.
hate her as a person.
Okay.
Like we would have mild bickering, but as kids do, like over fighting over a toy or something. So it was over dumb shit like that. Like it wasn't like actual like resentment or fighting or like violence or anything like that. No, there was none of that. There was just typical childish bickering. So we fought like normal kids fight, like just argued like, oh, it was my turn with the computer. Oh, it's my turn with the computer. Like dumb shit like that.
Hmm.
So I'm staring at, and I say this to give you the groundwork, the context. So I was staring at the back of her head. She's womp, just doing all that, and she's talking and talking and talking and talking because she loved to hear herself talk, and she loved to talk. Everything was always about her, by the way. So blah blah blah, whatever. So and like I said, there was no resentment or hatred or anger, nothing, none of that. So I'm just staring at the back of her head, looking at her ponytail. She's talking, 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 and I actually wasn't feeling or thinking anything. And then it was just like a random thought out of the silence. Like there was nothing going on in my head, like as in like thought wise. And then I just had a random thought just pop into my head. And the random thought was, she doesn't need to be alive anymore. There is no reason for her to be living.
Wow. So you can't even
So
say that, because my question was going to be, did you do this? What you're gonna describe to us now was it to alleviate boredom? But it's not even that.
no,
You just
it
thought
wasn't
this
even that.
person doesn't need to
It was
be
just
on
a
planet
random,
Earth
yeah, it was just
anymore.
a random thought.
Ooh, all right.
It was a random
Okay.
thought. Like I can like the way the comparison that I would make is like if you were in your house and you were like kind of like cleaning some stuff and you looked at your mailbox out the window and you saw that like it had mail in it and you were like, "Oh, I need to go check the mail." That was the same amount of emotional anything that I had. Like it was just like, "Oh, a thought." Like that was it. It was just no malice, no anger, no nothing. Just like it was like an observation. That's the way it was. Like that's how it felt to me. It was like, oh, she doesn't need to live anymore.
Wow, that's
Yeah, it was
I'm not
literally
gonna
just like,
even.
oh, I see that the mailbox is open. Oh, she doesn't need to be alive anymore. You see how my tone does not change at all, and there's no
Yeah,
emotion, there's no
that's why
nothing
I'm
behind
laughing.
that.
It's not
Yeah,
funny,
because
but it's
literally,
just to think
it
someone would
has
say
it has
that or think that.
zero anger or zero hatred or there's nothing behind it. It's just an
Yeah,
observation,
it's
I
just a
and it
can't
common
is.
even wrap
thought.
my head. I can't even wrap my head around that. I'm sorry. There's
It
no.
was like a
No,
common thought to
it's
her.
okay. I'm not gonna fault you for that, but that's the only way I can really kind of express. Like that's the only way I can really explain it. There was literally nothing else. I wasn't feeling homicidal at the time. I didn't want to hurt anybody at the time. I wasn't like angry at someone. I wasn't angry at her. Like it
Hold
literally
on,
just came out of nowhere.
Lauren. You weren't feeling homicidal at the time, but you committed a
No,
homicidal act. It didn't
that's
kill her, but you committed a homicidal act.
I committed a violent act which could have become a homicidal act, technically a crime. And if I was
The
arrested and charged with it, then yeah. But the thing is that I wasn't feeling like I wanted to hurt someone or even end someone's life. Like when I got in the pool, like that, when we went in the pool, I was fine. Like there was nothing going on. Like we were just chilling. And the same thing, and up until I did what I did, there was absolutely no thought beforehand of anything. Like we were just hanging out. We were just swimming. We were talking. We were doing all the stuff kids do. Like we were just normal kids. And when this happened, when that thought popped in my head, I went, huh. Like internally, I was like, that's interesting. Like it was kind of like interesting that it was almost like I'm not gonna say like it was almost like someone else spoke the thought because I know it was my thought, but it was like, huh, that's interesting. And so like I thought like when the thought popped in my head, I was like, And then like kind of like that, but internally, I was like,
You've
And
had
then
these thoughts since?
and then the second thought popped in that she doesn't need to be alive anymore.
Have you
And I
okay,
was like,
so
like I kind of it
so
did an internal shrug, and I was like,
an
okay.
internal
And
shrug,
so
okay.
what? Huh?
I said an internal shrug. All right, just like that. Doesn't
It's
need
like,
to be
oh,
alive
okay.
anymore. Gonna end her life. All right, we could try it. So my question is,
Well, I mean
I want to
that's
get
not what I thought.
into.
I didn't think we could try it. I just thought, oh,
Right.
okay. And like, do you
But
want
you
me to
did.
describe what I did?
Yeah.
Well, you
Yeah, you
did
want me to
try it.
finish,
Yeah,
right?
I
Yeah. So what
do.
Yeah,
But
let's
I
go.
have. I do want you to finish. But my question is, since then, have you had that thought before? I mean, after that,
Well,
this
see, now
person
you're
doesn't need
jumping
to
ahead.
be.
Let me
Okay.
finish this, and then I'll answer your question. So,
Okay.
when I had when I had the second thought that she doesn't need to be alive anymore, I was like, hmm. And so, without questioning it, without any emotion whatsoever, again, no anger, no resentment, no nothing, no hatred, no nothing. So I just walked up behind her in a straight line, silently. She didn't hear me. I wasn't like flashing around. I walked up to her. She was still womp womp womp. She was completely clueless. She didn't turn around. I guess maybe I moved in a way that like she didn't really couldn't see out of her peripheral vision, but also because she was a very self-absorbed kid, she kind of was probably just like not even thinking about anything. She was just talking. And she was still blabbing away, and I walked up to her. And when I got up to basically right behind her, where I could put my hand like right on her shoulder, I was basically like enough to like where I could just close enough to where I could just hug her from behind. But I was about like maybe not even a foot away from her, but I reached out with my left hand. I grabbed her ponytail. I rotated my left hand counterclockwise. I pulled her head back, held it in place, and started punching her face with my right hand. And again, with zero motion, without saying a word, nothing. So I was beating her face
Ow.
in, and she immediately, of course, started screaming, and blood and bruises started to like appear, like, redness, and like she was fighting back, thrashing around. And so I went, oh, you're being really loud. And I pushed her under the water, and I just held her there. And I basically just waited for her to drown.
Wow.
And what ended up happening was it was probably like only like 15 seconds, but it felt like a lot longer. But I was basically just waiting. It's like, okay, just gonna wait. I could see the bubbles coming up, or she was thrashing around, but I outweighed her. Not like by a ton, but like she was taller than me, but skinny, and I was shorter, but a little bit. Like I was still skinny, but like I was a lot stronger physically because I did like sports as a kid. So I just held her under, just basically waited for her to die. And what happened was I heard a door open, and I looked up while still holding her underwater, mind you. So I have my arms out, and I'm like holding her underwater. She's thrashing. There's water, water splashing. And I look up, and her mother steps out from, because they had like a side glass towards the patio, and her mother stepped out and was staring straight at me. And she goes, "What the fuck are you doing?" And she like looked completely freaked out. Like she was in shock and scared. And I like looked up and I went, "Oh shit." And I like basically just let my hands go. Like I kind of moved them up, like how people would put their hands up if a cop put them both upward, and I just backed up. And she came up to the surface, and she was sputtering and crying and bleeding. And her mom's like, "Oh my god!" And she like ran over, and she climbed out of the pool, and she's like laying on the pool, like the patio, like coughing up water and crying and bleeding. And her mom was like, "What the fuck happened?" And she was like, "She tried to kill me." And her mom looks at me and goes, "Get the fuck off my property and never come back." And I said, "Okay." Like literally just in that exact calm voice with no emotion, I calmly walked out of the pool. I put my sandals on, I grabbed my towel, I just walked home. I opened their fence, I just walked home.
Okay.
And
That's
literally zero fucks given, and no fear when her mom caught me. It was just like, oh shit.
I mean, it's a good thing her mother caught you.
Well, of
For one, the
course.
girl would be dead, and two, your
Yeah,
whole
and I'd
life
be in
would have
prison.
changed. Well, you were a child. I think you would be out by now,
Well,
but like
the law in Florida is that if you can be tried as an adult in the state of Florida. I think you have to be technically. I don't know if you have to be 15 or 16, but I'd have to look up the law. But in Florida, a minor can be tried as an adult, especially for something like murder, or attempted murder. So like something like that, I could have technically been tried as an adult. Maybe because I was 14, they would have put me in like juvenile and then tried me when I was 15. But that's, of course, if I had been arrested, which I wasn't. So what ended up happening was I walked home. Excuse me. I walked home, and of course, her mom probably called my mom. And to give a little context so the viewers understand what happened in the aftermath, this girl was a well-known pathological liar. She would exaggerate and be very melodramatic. And so when she said she tried to kill me, what her mom actually saw what her mom saw and like observed was us physically fighting. Like that was what her mom interpreted it as. Like there was a physical altercation going on, and her mom just wanted me off the property, and that was like just basically just splitting us up. And but her mom was like really freaked out when she said, "Don't come on my property ever again." I said, "Okay," and there was literally zero emotion. I was able to like I didn't care. I cut her off as a friend and never talked to her again. Well, at least
Oh,
until way later. But like what happened was so because she was a well-known liar and she would be very melodramatic and all that stuff, her mom heard her say she tried to kill me, but saw us technically physically fighting and thought we were just physically fighting. She didn't think that I was actually trying to murder her daughter, to kill her daughter. So her mom took the exaggeration and extrapolated what she saw, and she figured, okay, they were fist fighting, like fighting physically. She needs to split them up, and that's it. Like her mom basically just it ended there. And what's funny is that her dad was a lawyer, but I think he did some kind of corporate law. So, but because her dad also like everybody knew she was like very much a melodramatic, like pathological liar, so they didn't take her seriously. And to the point of should they have taken her seriously? The answer is, I mean, they don't know what's in my head. So they did her mom saw what she saw and she interpreted what her daughter said, in the way that she did. And I don't think we can really extrapolate intent just based on that snapshot. I mean, yes, it looks bad that I'm holding her in under the water, but we could have just been horse playing. But because when she popped up, she had a bloody face, obviously then you see that it's a violent act. But I could have just been flipping her over in the pool and like her mom could have been like, "Oh, stop horse playing." Like if it was like, a different situation,
mhm.
but her mom couldn't have known my intent. And I didn't even know my intent until it happened. So
You didn't
this
know
wasn't
your intent.
premeditated. Yeah, this was not premeditated. It was this was an on in the moment thing. So it would have technically been if I had actually ended her life, it would have been second-degree murder.
So she
So
was boring you, and you
no,
thought,
I would.
oh.
I mean, if you're talking about as a person in general, I
No,
mean, she
right
was
in that
never.
instance. In that
Oh,
instance.
I didn't do it out of boredom though. Like I was bored listening to her yap on and on about the subject of some boy and her other friend. Like, but that wasn't what triggered the thought. The thought kind of just came out of nowhere. Like
Did you
I
feel
w-
like it was you wanted to feel power or something? Is that
no,
part of
no,
it? No.
it wasn't a power thing. No, there was no power thing. I knew if I wanted to, I could hurt her, but I didn't want to do anything. I just did it. It was like a Terminator, like a robot. It was just robotic. There was no emotion. The only two thoughts I had were those two thoughts. The immediate thought and then the secondary thought, and then I did the action. And that was it.
Okay.
But she
Okay.
survived. And, uh, about a month later, I ended up in the hospital, and I was in there for about a month, or sorry,
What it
a few
okay.
weeks. And by the time I
Okay.
moved out, sorry, I was in the hospital for a few weeks, like 3 weeks, I think. And then when I was finally discharged and went home, they had already moved out of state. Their house had
Wow.
sold. So in the few weeks that I was in the hospital, they had put their house up for sale, sold it, and left Florida entirely. My mom had told me when we were driving back, when we went on the block, I was like, oh, and I looked over and I saw the sold thing, and I went, oh, they moved. And my mom said, yeah, they moved like a couple days ago. I was like, oh, that was quick. Like in my head, I was like, oh, okay. And in my head, I was like, that was quick. It's only been a few weeks. So
And did your mom know what happened? She knew.
no, of course not. If my
No.
mom knew, do you
Okay.
think I wouldn't have gone to jail? Come on now.
Oh, really?
Her mom tried to
She would have.
excuse me, I was drinking. What happened was in the aftermath when I walked home, my mom was like, "Hi, honey, like, you're home early," and I'm like, "Yeah." Sean and we got into a fight, and uh, you know, uh, like I came, her mom kicked me out, and my mom was like, "Oh, okay, whatever." She was like, "You guys are always bickering." Like she didn't take it seriously. She's like, "Oh, just another argument." I was like, "Yeah, it's not a big deal. I'm gonna go change, like shower and change." And so my mom was like, okay, honey, and like dinner will be ready. And like her mom called my mom, and I said, hey, by the way, like before her mom started calling my mom's house, I said, hey, if her mom calls, just ignore it because she's being melodramatic and she's claiming some stuff, and you know how she gets. So my mom's like, okay, that's fine. I don't want to deal with it anyway. And so yeah, I basically told her to ignore the phone calls, and my mom had no reason to not believe me. So she shut like her mom called my mom's house like a bunch of times. My mom never answered. She left a couple voicemails. She was like yelling and very angry. She was like, "I need to speak to you and your daughter," blah blah. And she was like really mad. And obviously she had reason to be, but I don't even think she believed her daughter. I think she was just mad that we were physically fighting. She was like, "We need to talk," and they fought. And my mom's like, "I know this," and she like deleted the messages because her mom left like a few of them, and then she just shut the answering machine off completely because this was the 90s. There weren't really cell phones a lot yet, so because I'm old. But
Right,
so
right.
my mom just shut off the answer machine, and so she couldn't even get through. And so my mom was like, "So you guys are not friends anymore?" Like later on, I said, "Yeah, no, we're gonna take a long break, if anything." And then I ended up going to the hospital.
Hospital,
So
what happened? Was it a psychiatric thing or what?
well, her mom kept calling, and my mom was like, she was starting to pick up, and like her mom would start yelling. My mom would hang up because she didn't want to deal with it. But I think at some point her mom mentioned what my former friend had said, and my mom was like, "What?" And I was like, "Oh shit!" And I heard it from upstairs because my mom can be loud, and also like my parents' house, they had like really high ceilings and a lot of tiles, so like it echoes. So I was upstairs and I heard my mom going, "What?" And I was like, "Fuck, I'm gonna be in trouble." And I was like, "Okay." So basically, I was like, "You know what?" I was like, "If I'm gonna get locked up anyway, it would be better for me to be in a hospital than jail." And as a stupid teenager, and I can say this with complete confidence, as a stupid teenager, not realizing that, hey, transfers are a thing, because I was a dumbass teenager. I was like, okay, well, they can't arrest me if I'm already locked up. And that was literally just my train of thought. And so what I did was, because I was like, oh, she's going to tell my mom at some point, and I'm going to get in big trouble. Her mom's going to, like, even if my mom doesn't believe her, like, she might raise a ruckus. Her mom might call the cops. Like, I was like, even though nothing had happened yet, her mom was like not letting up. She was like knocking on the door and calling and calling. And so she would like not give up. So I was like, I think if my mom doesn't talk to her, if someone doesn't like at least hear her out, like she's gonna call the cops like at some point. Like I thought that was my thought. I was like, I'm gonna go to fucking jail and I don't want to go to jail. So what I ended up doing was I was like, you know what? They can't lock me up if I'm already locked up. And of course, that's a dumb fucking thought. So what I did was I took my brother had a pair of carpenter scissors, and I opened them up, the scissors, so split them open, took the handle in one hand, in my left hand, and then took out my right arm and slit my wrist open.
Wow.
And I accidentally did it a little too deep, and my arm split like my wrist kind of split wide open. So I was like, oh shit, that was way too far. And the blood started rushing up, and I'm like, oh shit. So I was holding my arm closed, and I ran out. I was like, Mom, oh, excuse me. I'm still getting over being sick. But like I ran out and was like, "Hey mom." And she was like on the phone. She's like, "What?" And I'm like, I cut myself. And she was like, "What?" And she freaked out. She's like, "Get down here." And so yeah, it sounds so stupid because it was. So I went down the stairs, ran down the stairs, and she goes, "Let me see." She goes, "Oh my god." She starts screaming for my dad. My dad comes over, he's like, "What the hell's going on?" And my mom like hung up the phone. She's like, "Look, look." And my dad goes, "Move your finger." So I moved it. He goes, "Okay, here, we're gonna go to the hospital." He took tape and he wrapped it around my arm, and it was medical tape. He's like, hold your arm up, keep it like a vertical. I was like, okay. So I held my arm up like I was like, like basically just to my shoulders so the blood didn't rush down. So I held it vertical. We drove to the ER, went to the hospital, and when they unwrapped my arm, the ER doctor was like, "Hey, how did this happen?" And of course, because I said I cut myself, instant Baker Act, which is the involuntary hospitalization act in Florida. So basically, when a doctor or a cop or someone in a position of authority like that Baker acts you, It's nicknamed for the woman who got it put into law. So basically, what happens is you become a ward of the state for 72 hours, and you get put in a psychiatric hospital or psychiatric unit inside of a hospital. So because I had, I technically told the truth, but when he asked why I did it, I said, "Oh, I'm depressed," and obviously that was a lie. Like I was like, "I want to die," and like, no, of
Right.
course not. So of
You
course
did
it was
it
a
to
lie.
save yourself from
I
jail.
wanted to I wanted to avoid jail. Yeah, I wanted to avoid jail, not realizing that transfers are a thing. Like I said, stupid teenage impulsive move. So they, of course, said okay, instant Baker Act. They stitched me up, and he said okay. He told my parents what was going to happen. We're going to transfer her. She's going to get put into the system, and she's going to go to a unit, and you'll have to get called from that hospital. It won't be here to be somewhere else. And so my mother was like crying, and my dad was holding her, and I was like, this sucks. I just want to go to sleep. Like that was basically just my thoughts. I was like, I'm fucking tired, man. So they
Jesus, Jesus, Lauren, you're a fucking psychopath, man.
I mean, no shit, but not all people who slit their wrist open are psychopaths. Like I was doing it. I was doing the act for a selfish, reason, and not for legitimate like suicide purposes. Like I wasn't actually sad or depressed, and I wasn't actually trying to kill myself.
No,
I was
we
trying to
get that.
avoid
We get
accountability.
that. You're
Yeah,
right. We understand that.
yeah.
You just yeah, it's manipulate it's
It was a
manipulative.
manipulative act, of course. It was a
Wow.
way to avoid accountability, and it ended up working. So this was like a week after, like almost a week after the pool incident. So, like I said, our mom was still calling and her like bothering us and like pursuing, trying to talk to my mom about it. And so I ended up doing that because I was like, I don't want to go to jail. So I ended up getting transferred to a hospital with a psychiatric unit, which was kind of not far away, but like a decent, like 20 minutes away. And they put me in, and I was the only kid in there. They put me in, like, logged me under as, like, attempted to kill themselves. But they quickly found out that I was not there because I wanted to end my life. I was there because, I was a violent person, and they didn't know it, but I had tried to end someone else's life. And then because I was in there, I was extremely combative. And, I've been in and out of the hospital a bunch of times, but I've been specifically in psychiatric units 9 times since I was 14. So from the period of 2002 until 2016, 2016 was the last time, the most recent time. Throughout that entire period of years, I have been in them 9 times. I never got to double digits, but not something I'm trying to make more frequent anyway. But it's been a long time, so I would say I've improved a lot.
Let me ask you a question. So I've heard this before. People who are psychopaths are usually diagnosed with something called oppositional defiant disorder when they're children or underage, below 18. Were you diagnosed with that when you were in the hospital?
Um,
Oppositional ODD,
Yeah,
oppositional
no,
defiant
I know.
disorder.
Yeah, no, I know what it is. There's also conduct disorder, which is, more, I think conduct disorder is more of like related to stuff like truancy and stuff having to do with school. So like, your conduct is like bad or something like that. So, um, I wasn't. I don't. Because honestly, I don't know because I wasn't allowed to see my records when I was in the hospital. Obviously, being a minor and all, but they definitely knew I was non-compliant because when they tried to give me medicine and I tried to beat the nurse with a chair, that's,
What?
yeah, I picked up a chair and tried to hit her with it.
Bro, you tried to do a wrestling move on a nurse? Come on, Lauren.
Yeah,
Come
I
on.
know it sounds ridiculous, but I was actually trying to hurt her because they were trying to shoot me up with needles because when people are violent, they usually like sedate them. So they tried to put me on like antidepressants. I at first I just punched, like, slapped the pills away. And then when they're like, well, you can't come up, I'm like, okay, bye. Like, and so I just wouldn't come out of my room. And they're like, well, you can't be in there for 23 hours a day. I said, watch me. I'm going back to sleep. They would try to physically drag me. And when they started trying to sedate me, aka put the needle in my hip or ass, I started throwing hands. And so there were a couple of times when I was in like the general like recreational slash kitchen area. It's kind of like an area with chairs where they would do like group therapy, and then there was like a little a table where patients would eat at. And it was that point where they tried to give me medicine, and I picked up a chair and I said, "If you come near me, I'm gonna beat you to death with this." Like I was like, "I'll fuck you up." And so they That was not taken very well. The texts came in because the texts were like these big dudes. They were like, you know what's funny is that they were both like big. Two of the two texts that I saw the most were like two big black dudes. Like they looked like they were football players. Like I was like, these dudes could be in the NFL running. Like you could easily see these guys running down a field because they were big and they were tall. And I was like, damn, they're ginormous. Like, and I was a 14-year-old child. You know, I'm young, I'm little. I'm like, holy shit. And I was like under 5 feet tall. I was like this skinny little kid. And so, you know, they tried to give me medicines. I refused to take any medication. I would try to fight the nurses when they would try to, you know, and so they were obviously very frustrated. And there was this one nurse. She was cool people. She didn't get mad and she wasn't afraid of me. She was the only nurse that wasn't terrified of me, by the way. Like some nurses got pissed off and tried to do like the Nurse Ratched thing, and I laughed in their face. Like, do you think you're gonna boss me around? You got another thing coming. But uh so there was this one nurse, and you know what's funny is she was, you know, a black lady, and I'm not pointing out the race to be like, you know, not discriminatory. She just happened to be a black woman, and she was a little bit older than the other nurses, which probably helped. And she was not phased at all by my violence. Like the other nurses, like they would try to give me meds. I would slap the cup. They would be like, "You can't do that." And they would bring more pills, and I'd slap those, and I'd be like, and I would try to grab them, and they would start yelling, and the techs would run up, and so the nurses were pretty much all terrified of me, except that one nurse, and that nurse was coming in for her shift when I was like fighting with a couple other nurses. Like they were, when I say fighting, like they like it was more of like arguing. They were trying to get me to take meds. I was like, no, fuck you, go fuck yourself. I'm not taking shit. Like leave me the fuck alone. And they were like trying to get closer, and I was picking up the chair, and she walked in and she was like staring. I looked at her, and I'm like, what? And she's like, are you done? I was like, no, get these bitches away from me. Like I was mad. I was like, I'm not taking this shit. And she looked at them. She said, give me the medicine. And I was like, I'm not taking them from you either. She goes, I didn't ask you to take them. She said, I asked them to give them to me. And I was like, what? Like I was like, whatever. Like I was just like annoyed. And they gave her the like whatever. They kind of just put their hands up. They were like, we give up anyway. So they gave her the meds. And she walked in, and they like cleared the entire recreational room like when this happened, because someone getting violent, obviously they're like gotta clear the area, gotta have people come in, you know, put this person to sleep, like to drag them off to the quiet room or whatever. But she came in, she was like, listen, she's like, you're really gonna mess up my room like this? Like you gonna throw chairs? Like really? You do realize I have to clean this shit up after you're done, right? And you're gonna be like sleeping, and then I gotta do this shit. You really trying to do this to me? I just got here. And it
Were
was
you
funny because
considerate?
she
Were you
like literally
considerate to
just
her?
talked. She literally just talked to me like nothing phased her, and like she was the only person pretty much that I didn't try to throw hands with because she talked to me like I was an adult. Everybody else was treating me like I was a child, and she was like, "Listen, you're gonna throw chairs for what? You're gonna hurt someone and get put in the quiet room, and what did you really accomplish?" Like she actually talked to me and gave me like decent human respect. Everybody else was like treating me like I was a wild tiger, like, you know, scared and like ready to get the needle out and things like that. But she was like, listen, throwing the chairs around is not gonna do anything. You hurting someone else, you're just gonna be here longer, right? I was like, I don't give a fuck. Like I was, you know, an angry teenager, and she was like, okay, but I don't want you to be here forever. No offense. I was like, okay, I don't want to be here either. I want to go home. She's like, okay, but do you think hitting someone with a chair is they're gonna let you go home? No, they're not gonna let you go home. They're gonna keep renewing the Baker Act. You'll be here for months. She's like, I don't want you to see you here for
Makes
months.
sense.
And it's so funny because she was the only person that talked to me like I was an actual human. Everybody else treated me like I was a wild tiger, out of control, like just completely terrified, or like trying to, you know, force me to like, you know, be like kind of like show dominance. And I like I would laugh in the psychiatrist's face. I would laugh when they try to guilt trip me. They try to use my mom against me. Like I would just laugh. Like I laughed and my mom was crying on the phone. I just kept laughing. Like I didn't care. Like they were treating me like I had guilt or remorse, and I'm just like cracking up. Like, you think this is gonna work? This shit's funny.
Wild. That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
You're a
crazy.
true
No guilt or
psychopath,
remorse.
girl.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
you
yeah,
are.
I was in there for
You are.
3.5 weeks,
Through and
3.5
through.
weeks, and that was me when I was a teenager, and I was more out of control back then. I was
Three
like
and a
putting
half
holes in
weeks.
walls.
Oh.
I was like I lit shit on fire when I was younger. Like I had all kinds of red flags for, you know, being a psychopath like growing up. Um,
We're gonna
So
wrap this up soon, but sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah, sure.
Finish the story.
So
I have a question. I have 2 questions.
yeah, sure. So that was why I was in the hospital. Just to summarize that real quick. And so when my mom was driving me home, and I saw the sold sign was there, and I asked my mom about it. That was when my mom had picked me up. They had finally discharged me from the Baker Act. That was the exact day that I got out. That I saw that they had moved away, and they moved completely out of state.
Do you
This
think that
girl
has
turned
something to do with
72
you?
hours into 3.5 weeks.
Hmm?
You
Sorry, I didn't hear what
yeah.
you said.
He said you turned 72 hours into 3.5 weeks, and my question was,
They
do
renewed it a
you
couple
think
times, obviously.
well, that's crazy.
They
Did you
couldn't
think
figure out what
them
was wrong with me.
moving do you well, we know now. Do you think them
Yeah.
moving out of state has something to do with you, just out of fear you're gonna come for their daughter again?
No, because when I had talked to the mutual friend that we had, because the friend that she had mentioned when we were in the pool about liking the guy that she liked, I had talked to that friend because we actually knew each other, but we weren't friends. We just knew her through the girl, and her friend had said, "Oh, her dad got a new job and like she has family up there, so they just moved. They decided it was time to move." And so it may have had something to do with it, but it wasn't the entire reason.
Got it. Understand.
So
So I do have 2 questions before we wrap it up. Chris, do you have questions as well? Or I'll go first if you do. I'll go first anyway. So first of
No,
all,
no.
1 no. Okay, so first of all, do you consider yourself a good person? Would you consider yourself a good person? Because you were born this way, you can't help yourself. So you do have a moral standard. It might not be what traditional society has as a moral standard, but you did say that you do have some sort of a moral code. So do you consider
yeah,
because of that, do you
I
consider
have a
that
moral compass, so yeah. Um,
you do?
I would,
Okay.
I wouldn't consider myself a quote unquote good person. I would consider myself. So
Okay.
I'm not a good or evil person. I'm just a person, and people have the capacity to be both, one or the other, or both. I mean, I'm pretty much like anybody else in that regard. I have the capacity to do good, selfless things. I very rarely do them, obviously, but if ever. But I also have the capacity to do very evil things, but I don't do them. So just because I can do
But
something doesn't mean I will, and it doesn't mean I want to. So I have an internal
okay.
moral compass, and yes, you are correct. It is not exactly aligned with society. What society deems is good or bad, good and bad, and all that. But I have my own internal moral system, which I think is actually more neutral than society's. Because, like, let's be real about it. A lot of people think being gay is bad, morally bad. Very religious people. There's a lot of religions like Christianity and other Catholicism. Being gay is a sin, quote unquote. And I don't think that. So I'm actually more moral in that case. I'm more
I
morally neutral, I
think
would say.
I think society and people in general are moving away from what,
No,
traditional
no, I know that, but I'm
organized
saying
religions
I'm
believe.
saying I have like moral beliefs and moral stances that a lot of people don't. Like that people things that people would consider quote unquote bad or sinful, quote unquote. I either don't care or I have no feelings on it, or like for example, like I said, the gay thing. But yes, you're right. We are moving away from that. So a difference, I would say, is that one of an example a lot of people think that like if you get married and have kids, like that's a moral good for society, like that's a net positive. I do not share that belief. I am very neutral on the stance of children. If you want kids, have them. If you don't want kids, don't have them. That's literally my stance. But I do not believe in marriage. I think marriage is an archaic, outdated concept. I think it's a bad deal. It's a bad contract, and it should be treated as much of a shitty business contract as it actually is in practice. And I think that if you want to cohabitate with someone and have children, that's fine. Do you, boo? But being legally shackled to being legally shackled to a partner as someone who has been the survivor of domestic violence and did fight to get divorced, I do not believe in marriage, in the legal system of marriage. I absolutely do
Okay.
not
But
think it's a
that's
good thing.
because you had a bad situation.
I
That's
just don't
why.
think it's a good deal for either party. There are
But
very few benefits to
you already
marriage.
were married. You already were married. That's why
I
you can
was
say
married,
you
but I
don't
didn't get the
get
benefits
married.
of it. I didn't get tax cuts. I didn't get anything. All I got was violence and misery and just a lot of drama that I didn't need in my life. I've
Because
never
you
wanted to
married
be
the
married.
wrong person, that's why.
Yeah,
But you
but
can't say
even
that it's a
but the
bad
thing
deal because
is,
you had a bad relationship or a bad
well,
marriage.
I'm telling you my opinion. My stance on marriage is that it's not a morally good thing. I do not like it. I do not think it's a moral good. That's
Okay.
my opinion, but I do not think marriage is morally good. I think,
Do
like
you
I
think
said, I
it's
think it's out.
morally bad? You think it's morally bad? If it's
I
not
think a lot
morally
of people
good, we're talking about
I think a lot of
morals.
people get trapped in marriages. So yeah, I think it's more bad than good.
Okay.
Because
All
you can
right.
always, because like you can date someone for 20 years. Because my parents have known people that have dated each other. They were both previously married and got divorced. They decided never to get married again, and they've been dating for like 25 plus years, and they live together, and they basically have what would be considered a common law marriage, but they have separate bank accounts. They, both pay equal share bills. They don't have any kids together, but they decided like we want to be together, but we don't want to have the shackles of marriage, because if we decide to break up tomorrow, we could just leave, like split, and there's no legal hassle. And I think that's a good way to live life. Like with as little investment as possible, and you always have to have an exit plan. I believe that self-preservation is the ultimate, like it should be the ultimate goal for everybody, not just people in relationships, people that have big families, small families, whatever. Like you should always be looking out for yourself, because if you don't have your back, nobody else in life is guaranteed to have your back. There's no promises. Like I've seen people get abused by their parents, get fucked over. I've seen people cut out of their family's wills that were like helping them. I've known someone who helped their mother and their father when they were old, and they got cut out of the will. And the siblings were like, "Yep, we're
Wow.
taking all the shit." They got fucked over, and they were nothing but nice to their abusive family, and they got fucked over for it because they didn't watch their own back. They didn't realize they should have walked away because their family was a bunch of evil, manipulative people. And I say this as someone who has been manipulative. So, if I'm calling someone evil, they're pretty bad. And so it's people that were actively hurting someone that they claim to love and taking advantage of someone's niceness. And that's the reason why I say you should always look out for your own well-being. You cannot help others at the expense of yourself. I'm not advocating for anybody to live like me. I live a very selfish life. I am technically a leech on society. I am a net negative for society as a whole. Like when it comes down to like numbers and what I cost society and what I do to society, I am a net negative. However, I don't take from random people, and I don't try to hurt random people. And I'm very isolated. And so I think that is about as morally neutral as one can get. Like, I am my own island, and I do the best that I can not to hurt other people, not to hurt random people. And as long as I'm basically kind of like the hornet's nest in a tree, if you don't provoke me, I won't swarm and sting you. If you provoke me, if you fuck around, you might find out. Now, when it comes to people that I know personally, when it comes to my family, that's a whole nother wasp nest that I won't get into. But my
Next
family and I,
episode. The next
yeah,
episode.
yeah. My family and I have done very evil things to each other, and you can see that the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. And by the way, my father has narcissistic personality disorder, and according to genetics, I know you didn't want to get too clinical, but I just want to put this out as a fact.
Oh,
Fun little
please.
fun fact: people who have a cluster B disorder, I don't know about the other clusters, but specifically for cluster B, if a biological parent has a cluster B disorder, and my father has narcissistic personality disorder, if they have a biological child, the biological child is 50 to 55% more likely to develop a cluster B disorder just based on genetics alone. And that is what happened with me. My father has NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, and he has antisocial traits. So he has the emotional detachment, the coldness, things like that. He doesn't have really the criminality aspects, but he has like the emotional detachment, the not feeling guilt or remorse symptoms of it. Um, and I ended up with the opposite. So I have antisocial personality disorder, being a psychopath, and I have narcissistic traits, but I don't have full narcissistic personality disorder. But I do have the selfishness, the lack of empathy, the thinking I'm better than other people, those parts of narcissist NPD. I do have those narcissistic traits, but they're only traits. They're not a full blown. I don't meet the qualifications for a full blown diagnosis. So that's a little fun fact.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep,
And I did have a second question. Thank you for all of that. That
of
was
course.
fascinating, really, it was.
You're welcome.
And my second question is,
I am a fascinating
uh,
person.
you are fascinating. And my second question was, so the person who is your family member who we mentioned earlier, I'm assuming you don't want me to say who that person is, but they
Yeah, I
know
appreciate that.
but they know what you are. They know that you're a psychopath, but they still get used by you. Do you think that there's a level of denial there for what you actually are? I mean, they know it, but are they in denial?
um, well, there's not really denial. She knows about the diagnosis. She doesn't know that I'm using her. She doesn't know about that part. So for
Denial.
a
That
lo-
must have that's some form of denial. Has to be.
no,
If
she's
she
not
knows
aware
about
of
the
it. She's not aware of it.
I bet you she is. I bet you she is
No,
deep down.
she's
Deep down
not.
inside.
No, no,
Okay.
she's not. If because she would have 100% called me out on it. She would have brought it up, and she hasn't.
Well, I
So.
mean, you did mention that there's some family dynamics. You all did evil things to each other. Do you
Well, my
think that
parents were very abusive. I just want to put
right,
that
do you think that
straight
there's a
out.
form of guilt for
No,
allowing you to
absolutely
have a
not.
childhood? No, she has no guilt at all
No,
either. You just
no,
okay.
because my
Guiltless
father.
family, they feel no
Yeah,
guilt at
because
all, none of them.
well,
Right?
to answer the question, no, and I think they deserve everything that I'm doing to them, and it's not really like I'm actively doing harm to them. I'm not like running over to their house and like burning it down or robbing them or hurting them or fist fighting them. I'm not doing any of that. I'm playing the long game, and in the end, I'm gonna be the one laughing because I've already been informed that when they die, I'm gonna be left a trust fund, so I'm gonna be a lot richer once they're gone. And no, I'm not going to try to expedite that process before you ask. I'm going to let
Yeah.
them have their natural long lives. And my family has a tendency to live very long. My grandfather's past their 90s. My grandmother lived into her late 80s. So my family has a long, like, I'm willing to wait the long game. As long as I outlive them, I will be rewarded for it once they're gone. So I'm playing the long game.
So
And
tomorrow your family gets in a car crash and dies. You feel nothing except
it's
maybe
going
a
to be a
little bit of
rough
happiness.
Thanksgiving, but Thanksgiving's
Yeah,
definitely going to be canceled. But I mean, hey, it is what it is.
you don't feel anything at all except, hey, I got this money, basically.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that. If my parents, like, if tomorrow they crashed and died, like you said, if my parents got into a car and, like, went to, I don't know, go pick up, like, milk or something, just something silly, and they just got into a really bad, some dude was driving drunk, just hit them, car flipped over, complete, both just dead, both just instantly dead. Obviously, it'd be a tragic accident. My brother would be completely demolished, absolutely destroyed. And of course, I would be the supportive sister. There would be a shit ton of paperwork and lots of legal stuff going on. But yeah, I wouldn't like, it's not like I'm gonna cry the rest of my life. No, of course not. I'm gonna do.
Would you fuck
Uh,
your brother over if you had the chance, if it was
no, of
completely
course
legal?
not. What the hell? No.
It's completely legal. You sign this paper, you get everything, he gets nothing, but it's
No, I would
legal.
never do that to him.
No,
I have no
okay.
reason to do that to my brother. My brother has been a good brother. Yes, he's had his mistakes. When I had told him what my father had done to me, he accused me of lying and said I was making it up. And so there was some anger and resentment for a while. But no, my brother's a generally good person. And he's, he protected me quite a bit when we were younger. I got bullied a lot. So I have no reason to fuck him over. And also, my brother already knows that I'm going to get a lot more monetarily than he is. But that's the way my parents made it because my brother makes a shit ton more money than I do per year. So it's, basically because I'm the one that's more quote unquote needy, they're giving me more money because and stuff because my income's a lot less than his is per year. I mean, he owns a big house big expensive house. I have a small little condo, which, is technically paid off, but like, I didn't it just like he makes a lot more money per year than I do. He doesn't need it. I would need it. because I'm not never gonna work a regular job again. So
So I always try to you're never gonna work a regular job again. That's nice. So I always try to find like the good in people, even if there is no good in people. I see something good in you because you actually care about your brother. You said he was a good brother. You wouldn't
yeah,
fuck him
he's a
over
good
even if you
person.
had the chance.
I love him. To the
Oh, you
capacity that
do?
I can
Okay.
love. I to the capacity that I can love. I love him. I love him as a brother. He's my sibling, and I have a lot of affection for him. And that's separate from my parents. Like, yeah, of course, do I love my parents? Yeah, in the familial sense. Do I like them as people? Not all the time, really. I mean, who really does like their people as parents, technically, though? I mean, you can make the argument that nobody likes their parents all the time, and that every family has its problems. But like if even if it was just my dad that died tomorrow, I'd be like, oh well, that sucks for him. It literally would not change my life in any way. I mean,
You
it
know,
would be less likely. I mean,
you were
I would probably
starting
lose
to
out on.
warm my heart, but then you said it wouldn't change your life in any way.
Well, I should take that back. It would change my life because he's fixed stuff around my house, and then I would have to start paying people to fix stuff. So right now I get free stuff. So
Unbelievable.
I would rather get stuff for
Unbelievable.
free. I mean, listen, I don't want him to die. I want my parents to live nice, long lives because in the end, as long as, like I said, as long as I outlive them, I'll be fine. And I don't have any malice towards my parents. They're my parents. They've done terrible things. Yes, they've done criminal things. They've been abusive, but they've also been very supportive. My mom bailed me out of my divorce. She did a lot. My mom, I think my mom to some degree does feel guilt for not being willing to and being unable to protect me from my father, from what he did to me when I was younger. However, she does have a lot of denial in that case. She's very much buried her head in the sand, like all the way on Australia kind of level, like of denial, like so far deep. They'll be on their deathbed and she'll never admit what happened. And neither will my father, obviously, because he has no reason to. Um, but separate from them, my brother is a good person and he has tried to help me out. He has been there for me. He's supported me. He was very protective of me when my ex-husband went to jail, and he's been very supportive in me improving my life and doing good things, making money, losing weight, doing stuff to improve my life. And so yeah, I love my brother. I want him to be happy, and yeah, I would never screw him over like money wise or in any other way. I have no reason to. He has done nothing wrong to me. He's been a good brother. We've had our fights, we've had our flaws, but all siblings do, whether a psychopath or not. You know. So
Okay.
that's how I love my brother. He's a very good person. He deserves, all the success he's had. He deserves more success. And my parents have already succeeded in life, so they're set for life. And I will pretty much be set for life once they're gone, which I don't need it to happen any faster than it's going to happen. It's going to happen when it's going to happen. I don't need to expedite that process. I don't want to. There's no desire for it.
Okay, got it.
So,
Understood completely. Well, this was a great episode. This was a great podcast. Thank you
it
so
was.
much for coming on,
Of
Lauren.
course, you're
Really.
very welcome.
Yeah,
Thank you for
thank you,
having
thank
me.
you.
Thank
Would
you
you
for
consider
having me.
coming back? Would you
Of
consider coming
course.
back for another one? Yeah,
Of
because I want
course.
to
And definitely when
hear
I come
more.
back, I will absolutely be roasting you for being in California and hating
Oh
Florida.
no, listen,
Because,
listen. Let's get
listen, you are entitled to your wrong opinion, but I definitely want to
look.
roast you more. I
Let's get
definitely
our
want to
geographical
roast you and
dis.
get into the. Yes, we're going to do the East versus West Coast,
All
folks.
right, all right, all
Next
right.
time. But yeah,
Thank
I
you, thank
definitely
you, thank
absolutely
you.
would love to come back.
I look forward
Awesome.
to bantering with you about your geographical location. So,
Yes, me too. I definitely look forward to bantering about how California is inferior.
well, if you guys want to hear that and more of Lauren's life, tune in to another episode.
All right.
Yes. All right. Thank you guys. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, everyone. Thank you.
Peace out.
Peace
Bye.
out.